Live from SABC headquarters in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. Welcome to this week's penultimate edition of the Watchdog. My name is Vuyo Mvoko, and on the show tonight,
the money that's invested in tourism is not the same money that's required for energy. It's not the same amount of money that is required for potholes.
SA Tourism head comes out guns blazing, defending the state marketing agency's much criticized proposal to spend billions of rands on a UK football club that many say is now a shadow of its former self. Our experts will try to cut through the noise and examine some of the pertinent issues that this saga continues to raise. Where water and electricity meet, Rand Water CEO explains the situation that has forced humanitarian aid organization, the Gift of the Givers, to come to the rescue after Gauteng's water crisis spiraled out of control and created panic in the province's health sector. The CEO's interview will be followed by inputs from doctors, nurses and workers who will appraise us of the situation on the ground and how hospitals are coping or not. The Watchdog starts now. SA Tourism Acting CEO Themba Khumalo says the country is expected to rake in around 88 billion rand in profits from its investment in the Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. Khumalo has defended the 1 billion rand sponsorship deal, saying the funding was meant to be spent on foreign soil regardless of the initiative.
The money that's invested in tourism is not the same money that's required for energy. It's not the same amount of money that is required for potholes. There are other departments that are dedicated and are given that mandate by legislation. Our legislated mandate is not about that. Our legislated mandate is about persuading international people to travel into the country and spend money in our economy. And that is what we will stick to. Whether it is through this initiative or any other initiative, but that is what we are mandated to do, that is what we're paid to do, and that is what we will continue to do until we're told otherwise. So I just wanted to place that particular context for what we're going to discuss, which is the topical issue on the table. Now, how do you find these people around the world? What you certainly don't do is you don't do random. You don't just, place an ad on TV and hope somebody's going to see it and that they'll be persuaded to come to the country. That's not what we do. There are aggregators of databases around the world. So you've got to find platforms that aggregate convertible databases in order for you to market directly so that you know that the people that you're targeting, one, are aware of your destination, two, have got the money to travel long haul, and three, have got the willingness to do a long haul trip. So you've got to be able to access those databases. Now, who are the aggregators of those databases? One, global media, whether CNN, BBC, etc., all of the big global media houses are able to aggregate audiences, just like, here in South Africa, whether it is Newsroom Africa, ETV, SABC, you are aggregators of audiences, and the people that place adverts on your channels are not doing it for your entity. They're trying to get to your audience. And that is precisely what we're doing.
The CEO of SA Tourism explaining the agency's standpoint on this matter that has gotten South Africans from all walks of life talking. Now, joining us to talk about what this means for tourism, or to explore some of the tourism-related issues, is Professor Kaitano Dube from the Vaal University of Technology. Prof, good evening. Thanks very much for your time. Mr. Kumalo, I suppose, is correct. These agencies like his across the world have a mandate. They're paid to do exactly what they are trying to do here.
Good evening, Mr. Vio, and your viewers at home, and thank you for having me. Indeed, I think we recognize and understand the importance of tourism, particularly to our country, as we emerge from COVID-19. Indeed, it is SA Tourism's mandate to make sure that the country is known across the world. But one also would be mindful, I think, of all the issues that have been raised, I think, by the South African the people in general with regards to this particular kind of funding. I think there has been a reconfiguration of the tourism market, as it were, as a result of COVID-19. And one would also understand that there is need there, therefore, to rethink, I think, the marketing strategies and the amount of investment that can be made at a particular time. One, taking into consideration the need to have a balancing act as we endeavor to market our country as a top tourist destination. But one then has to ask, is the investment of close to R1 billion worth it? There are two sides to this coin. So normally destinations are not great because they are great, but they are great sometimes because of advertisement. So advertising is one of those cogs that we can actually use to market our country. But investing all that money in football, one wonders whether that is the correct thing. Whether that also captures the various segments of the tourism. Like I was saying, that you would realize that there has been a shift in terms of the tourist numbers that have been coming to South Africa post-COVID-19, with the USA market now leading. Now, from where I'm standing, one would then ask the question, are all the Americans, for example, which is one of the leading markets, are all the Americans football watchers? One would then come up with an answer that says, not necessarily. So I think in terms of our marketing strategy and our marketing investment, we really need to take into consideration the shift that has been created by COVID-19 in reconfiguring the global tourism market. I think if one has been listening to some of the voices that has been coming out, there has been, I think, a drive to capture some of the leading markets, particularly from Asia. One would look at India and China, as these are some of the emerging global tourism markets where every country needs to have a piece. I think in terms of if one looks at the Europe, particularly Britain, which is one of the leading countries, which is one of the leading market for tourism. Broadly speaking, one would want to believe that that particular market is quite aware of the tourism products that we have as a country.
Well, I had an argument today from someone who was saying, well, the number one consideration would have been the fact that there's hundreds of thousands of people, of South Africans, just South Africans, there. Number two, they know the country very well. Number three, they're quite keen to look at what we have, perhaps more so than others. And that makes for a compelling case to look at that, to perhaps look at that market first before you may want to look at that. And then a second point is that football is big. You heard him talking about these aggregators and so on, and that it's one of the most obvious go-to area, so to speak. And then a third one, and this was from someone who had been in the space before, was that, look, South Africa has challenges when it comes to other jurisdictions that may potentially give us high numbers of tourists, but because we haven't invested in the kind of infrastructure that would make it easy for the Chinese, for example, to come to South Africa. So you can't throw money at such markets in the hope for the best, because you have no more than 3 offices in a country of more than 1.6 billion people, where people simply cannot get, documents to come to South Africa and so on. So you'd be wasting money if you were to invest in a huge marketing drive in that kind of a country with those kinds of problems. Just your thoughts around those issues.
Okay, so I think just to go back to my earlier point, if one looks at the data that has been provided by SA Tourism, their latest report, I think their last third quarter report, it indicates that the USA has actually outpaced the British in terms of the tourism market. And for those of us who are in aviation tourism, you would know that the Cape Town International Airport, for example, he has been quite busy in terms of attracting new airlines. And if one also looks at the type of aircraft that have been, most of them that are medium aircraft that are on the Johannesburg maybe and Heathrow Airport, one then would say, let's take a step back and rethink in terms of our investment. Indeed, I agree with other speakers that are indicating to some of the challenges, particularly with getting visas in the country, which I think our Home Affairs need to sort out. We just completed an ENSA conference, which was aimed at looking at the drive in terms of technological innovation within the tourism industry. And one of the things I think from the participants has been the issue of getting South African visas in time. And I think these are things that we need to sort out then as a country, so that when we go out there to market our product, we know that we have put our ducks in a row. Indeed, our country really needs investment in terms of technology, of infrastructure, particularly tourism infrastructure. But if you look at, if we are to put ourselves in context, we still have the best infrastructure if you look at the African continent. Indeed, there is room for us to improve. I think so. These are issues that we can deal with. So one then questions, I think, the amount that has been invested in this particular deal, given those, I think, issues.
That's where I was going next. I mean, people are questioning whether R1 billion is really worth it. Some go further to say, is it even worth it investing in a club like Spurs, which hasn't covered itself in glory in recent years? Now, who within the sector, who takes care of those kinds of questions? In other words, does the system have the kinds of checks and balances, that you would expect, especially when monies like the, figures that are being mentioned here are involved? Because, as is the case with, let's say, local government, right? One of the criticisms is that Auditor General report after Auditor General report, speaks to the same issues or raises the same issues. But those bodies entrusted with playing the oversight role either don't do it, or the people who occupy the positions that matter simply do not have the expertise to interrogate the information that they get given. In other words, put differently, your portfolio committee on tourism, may have people, who form, a part of that committee, but they may not have the wherewithal to be able to interrogate these kinds of decisions. Your thoughts on that one?
Indeed, I think it's really a complex issue. One, given that we do not know, as you and I sit here, and I think the generality of South Africans know the kind of mathematics, the kind of calculations that went into this particular decision making. To say when we are investing this kind of amount of money, what sort of return on investment are we expecting? And one also is cognizant, I think, of the challenges. Soccer, yes, one wouldn't want to maybe delve into which club should have gotten this, because given that, I think it's about the league. One would say maybe it's about the league, because the league that particular team is then gives that kind of exposure that the SA Tourism was looking at. But this becomes guesswork because
on the sport, knowing what you know about what I've been told up until now, knowing what you know about tourism, about aviation, and about everything connected to this industry, does this look like a good or a bad investment?
Marketing is never a bad investment, but I just think that it's the timing is wrong, particularly for the country.
And the reason for that?
One would be cognizant, I think, of the political climate. And I think we have spoken about some of these issues to do with infrastructure. I think the CEO, or some of the issues that he was trying to rebut, I think these are issues that one would have been sensitive to in arriving at some of these decisions. We have got a number of ways that we can market the country. I think in an inexpensive way. I mean, one would look at, we have got quite a number of games in South Africa. The SA Tourism could leverage on this. I'm quite aware that we have got quite a number of sports. We have got, I think, is the Female World Cup that will be kept out. These are avenues that can be used by SA Tourism to be able to market the country in an inexpensive way.
And very quickly, Prof, to his retort that potholes, electricity, or even other costs for the matter, has got nothing to do with me. My business is to look at where to make the best investment for the for the best returns.
I didn't get that.
I'm saying to his retort that, look, I've got nothing to do with electricity. I've got nothing to do with potholes. So don't ask me to be, to think about those things before I make an investment that I think, or I'm convinced, is in the best interest of South African tourism.
One would want to make a 360-degree decision best. So one would be cognizant of the environment in which you want to invest. I think the good word of mouth is more powerful, most probably, than investing that kind of money in a football team.
Okay.
If South Africans come and there's running water and there's electricity and they are happy, they are likely to go and spread the good word of mouth, which is more effective than any other kind of marketing that one can actually utilize. So I don't think those comments to be honest, I don't think those comments were fair. You really need to take into consideration all things.
Prof, let's leave it there. Thank you very much for your time and insights.
Thank you very much.
To discuss this matter further, we're now joined by Sandile Swana, who is a political analyst and a governance expert. Mr. Swana, good evening. Thanks very much for your time. Well, the CEO of SA Tourism says, hey, I have a legislated mandate. Mine is not to think about electricity, water, or anything else. It is to make sure that I market this country as a good destination for anyone who wants to tour and wants to come and spend their money here.
Yes, I think that for you and your viewers, first of all, I must commend South African tourism for presenting us with a senior manager who is clearly competent and knowledgeable about his job. It's not common that we find that these days. So the other issue is that, yes, the issue that he needs to focus on the mandate after Treasury has already agreed on the budgets that must, and Parliament approved all the budgets that must go to different places. We don't take all the money and put it into roads or put it into schools. Every department must get a fair share of the budget, and it must be used by competent professionals. So on that score, I think it is spot on, but I think I must quickly add this. When you look at things like ESCOM and many other departments in South Africa today, just accept that, for instance, ESCOM is producing electricity that is several times more in cost than our neighboring countries. ESCOM, probably as we speak today, has got 3 times the staff that they need to have on the staff to produce the amount of electricity they are producing. So the amount of wastage in the state, in the other departments all over, is between 15 and 40% in their procurement. So when you're looking to save money, there are places within each department where you can save a lot of money, including billions. So we don't need to conflate the issues of one department with the issues of another department.
Now, who then must bear the responsibility for what a lot of things that South Africans are raising on the back of this whole episode? Because much as the CEO of SA Tourism may be correct in saying, I look narrowly at my responsibilities, the mandate that I have, the budget that I've got, and I must do what I've promised to do with what my agency has promised to do with that money. Are we? In other words, are people who are saying, what about ESCOM? What about water? Barking at the wrong tree? In other words, are they being failed by someone else other than the CEO of tourism and his team and their board? And so is it unfair to level the criticism that some people are leveling at him?
The CEO of SA Tourism and SA Tourism itself has got a tremendous job to do, which is to grow tourism and the number of visitors into the country from 5 million, I believe, to 21 million, which means that they've got to maintain a compound growth rate of about 18% a year. That's not a joke. And in that, there's a certain minimum amount of the total number of employment, the number of people employed. 1 in 10, they need to make sure that 10% of the labor force is in the tourism industry, and so on and so forth. So they've got a job which has got many investment and economic benefits that will accrue to the South Africans. And they need to focus on that. It is not their job to run ESCOM or to run Rand Water or any other water authority. They must do their job. Now, coming to the issues of these other entities that are failing. The failure, for instance, we don't have electricity, most of us in South Africa. We have sewage running into the oceans, running into houses, water that is stopping to flow because there's no electricity to pump the water, and so on and so forth. The money to do those jobs, the human capital to attend, the skills to attend to the problems of water, the problems of electricity are already in South Africa. They've been here for some time. We, as the voters of South Africa, have allowed the comrades to redirect the funds for ESCOM, for electricity, for water, for sewage, for the school children into their own private pockets and to fund the ruling party. And we cannot take that failure on our part as citizens and go and lay it on the table of the board and the CEO of SA Tourism. That is unfair. It must not be done.
In fact, over the years have complained, they themselves, the tourism industry has complained about roads, the quality of roads or lack of, in many parts where they could be attracting tourists. And this is when, tourism was doing a lot better than it is doing currently, even before COVID, in fact. They were complaining about crime. That many tourists don't want to come here because of the crime levels. The list goes on. So who then should we be holding responsible for the things that are not being done in the areas that you've mentioned, but also the couple of areas that I've just highlighted? Because one would want to believe that Treasury allocates or does its allocations, as it is busy with doing right now, ahead of the budget, right? It does so with an appreciation of where each rand goes and what we get in return. And that's even putting aside corruption and related issues, for a second. In other words, when you decide to give this one 5 rands, the other one 3 rands, the other one 10 rands, you're making that with presumably, assuming that you're going to get the best return or the best, return for whatever money you're putting into the system.
Yes. Treasury.
And I'm asking this incidentally, and I'm asking this on a day that Cabinet began its Lekgotla, which is going to inform what the President is going to say on the 9th in his State of the Nation address, and what the Finance Minister will then speak, the priorities the Finance Minister will speak to when he talks about the nation's budget.
Yes. So Treasury is not used to getting a proper return on investment when they distribute money to this department. So when you distribute money to the departments, you have a target return on investment, whether it's in the form of the metric pass rate, how many mothers will have successful labor, all those things. They know what they are expecting, but they do not get it. And the Auditor General has confirmed that consistently over the past 11 years. Now, I want to just say to you that you can have a good horse, but not only must you have a good horse, you must also have a good jockey. So Treasury gives a lot of the departments good money, but what they don't have in the departments are good jockeys. In other words, the Director Generals, the DDGs, the directors who are supposed to operate these budgets, they are not up to standard. That is not to say in South Africa, there are no South Africans that are world-class. There are many, many South Africans who can run this country better than any other country, very competitively. And I'll make a quick example. I had a face-to-face meeting discussion, in-depth discussion, call it a case study with the former Director General of Higher Education, Konde. And he explained to me how he went about building 2 universities, one in the Northern Cape, one in Mpumalanga. And basically what it was a consortium from WITS and UP that was formed to go and do the whole conceptualization, design, and build the thing. And they built those things, created them, and brought change back to Treasury. And Treasury came back and asked, how did you do it? Because we've never heard of this. What we know are people who come back and ask for more money. So there are South Africans who know how to do this job. So most of these things that are failing, whether it's water, whether it's potholes, it's not failing necessarily because of Treasury. Treasury has got its own failings, which they must be criticized for. But right now, the biggest problem is that in virtually every department, the wrong people are employed there by the comrades for the wrong reasons, and the job can never get done, regardless of how much money you put there. And we must not necessarily put SA tourism in that basket. At this stage, certainly I do not have any evidence that would say to me, I must do that.
Well, the members of the executive currently meeting to discuss the state of this nation, the priorities for this year going forward, have been entrusted by the voters with the responsibility of ensuring that each and every aspect of our lives is taken care of. And each area has an executive member responsible, for it, so that they're able to go back to cabinet virtually every week, to report on progress being made, problems that are there, successes, and how to reward those behind those successes, but also how to encourage the good things that are being done so that we do more of them. Now, I was watching the other day what the Minister of Tourism posted when this particular saga, came to the fore, or to at least to the public's attention. And it was interesting for me that even though she clearly, Lindiwe Sisulu, the Minister of Tourism, clearly had knowledge or insights even into what had happened and so on, she didn't seem prepared to deal with that issue, but rather chose to somewhat narrowly focus on her own political issues, political battles, and somewhat try to play the victim card instead of rather using the opportunity to enlighten the nation about what had actually happened and where the media organization may have gotten it wrong and what was the true state of affairs. And that, for me, was an opportunity lost. And it's not only applicable, I would even argue, to these particular ministers, but many ministers do exactly that. When problems arise, they hardly ever focus on the issues themselves, but put their own interests, personalities, or personal situations first, which then speaks to, or which is the final point I want to make, whether, in fact, we aren't being failed by those who are supposed to take the lead on these matters. And not only the issue we're talking about today or tonight, tourism, but the electricity issues that people are raising, the pothole issues, the water issues, the crime issues that people are talking about.
Yes, that one that you are raising is what I call confusionism. Confusionism happens when you give great details, a lot of detail about, give details, a lot of detail about that are not connected to the matter at hand. The matter at hand here has been explained by the CEO. They've done careful market studies, they've done careful strategy studies, they've done the econometrics, and there is an approval process. And the approval process is still internal stage, and Lindiwe Sisulu has not addressed people on that. It's only gone up to the board. It's not gone to the province. It's not gone to the stakeholders. Not gone to the minister. So, in this case, the minister would be Lindiwe Sisulu. So she's probably being asked about a topic that she has not, in her official capacity, been asked to actually make a decision on, or to align with, or agree with, or disagree. Now, the problem is that we also are very keen to appoint people into portfolios that they are not specialists in, that they are not qualified in. Lindiwe Sisulu has been a jack of all trades in South Africa. She's done housing, she's done foreign affairs, she's done everything under the sun. And none of them has she ever been successful in the first place, like many of her colleagues. Because 99% of our cabinet are failures. That is why the DA and probably the other parties would agree that, in fact, our cabinet deserves a vote of 100% vote of no confidence, all of them. So that is where the issue is at. Now, this thing that she's raising, that she's got enemies, she's got this and the other thing, or what you call a personal situation. Every politician, the day you become a politician, you adopt an ideology, political ideology, you've created international enemies all over the world for yourself. So you can't be talking to us about that. We need the hard facts that are dealing with the matter at hand today.
And what about those who put her there? And not talking just about her, but put the people who aren't performing or who put a whole host of other issues first before they put the nation. I'm not talking just about the person or the minister, Lindiwe Sisulu, but this, I mean, what you're saying goes for every other minister and the person who leads them, and that's the president of the country, who has the prerogative to appoint people to those positions.
Yes. So your question then has got levels that needs to be answered at. One level is that every cabinet minister, competent or incompetent, continues to remain in the cabinet, remains in the cabinet only because the president keeps them there. Those who are not yet in the cabinet who get invited are invited by the president, which is Cyril Ramaphosa. Which means now those people are endorsed by him. And from the time that he took power, he said he was going to have performance agreements with them and performance appraisals and report to us which ministers are performing. I'm still waiting to see those reports. I have not seen any performance reports from Cyril Ramaphosa about each one of these ministers. That has not happened. Now, secondly, for you to be appointing competent people, you must at least have the competency of selecting right people and appointing them. It's a competence, it's a skill by itself. It's a great leadership skill to choose the right team, high performance team. That skill has been lacking since the Polokwane conference. And in fact, to be totally sincere, the office of the president in South Africa has not had a president who has the aptitude, the natural gifted ability, and the background training to be a president of this country. So the people who are there, including Cyril Ramaphosa, who have been president of this country, have been totally unsuitable for that office of president. They may be suitable for other things, certainly not to be president of this country. In terms of educational levels and all sorts of things like that, the background, the aptitude, natural aptitude of the person. So that has been that. Then the last part of this incompetence that is put at the highest level of authority in the country is the voters who have continued to vote for the African National Congress to install in office an incompetent president every year since 2008, and also to install cabinet ministers who don't know the first thing about anything. And the evidence of this is the fact that we have now load shedding, we have water shedding, we have investment shedding, we have job shedding. Our children are not competitive in maths and science. They're not competitive in reading for comprehension when compared to other African countries and compared to the world. So the progress that has been made in South Africa has now been reversed.
Mr. Swano, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir.
He's a political analyst and a governance expert. Up next, Rand Water CEO explains the situation that has forced humanitarian aid organization Gift of the Givers to come to the rescue after Gauteng's water crisis spiraled out of control and created panic in the province's public health sector. It's been a busy week for humanitarian aid organization, the Gift of the Givers, after receiving calls from the Department of Health to help with water so that patients can take their medicines and drink. They try to help. They've been to several hospitals trying to help alleviate the suffering on the patients. Well, Sipho Musai is the CEO of Rand Water, and we tried to get him yesterday, but unfortunately we couldn't, as they were held up in meetings to try and deal with the very same situation. But he's here tonight to help us understand the problem better and whether in fact there is light at the end of the tunnel or water at the end of the well. Mr. Musai, good evening. Thanks very much for your time. In a nutshell, what's the problem?
Yeah, thank you for having us. Good evening, Vuyo. I think in a nutshell, what we've been experiencing here in Gauteng, especially in 3 of our metros, Johannesburg, Ekurhuleni, and Tshwane, It's certainly a double whammy in the sense that we have experienced, if you like, higher levels of load shedding. We went to, I think, 5 and beyond at one stage. But at the same time, we had heat waves that lasted approximately 2 weeks. As a result of that, the demand, if you like, outstripped the supply in terms of our maximum pumping capacity. What we do generally, it's, we are pumping at about producing 5,000 million liters of water a day for about 18 million consumers in our area of operation, which on average is sufficient. What happens is if we have load shedding that lasts for a lot longer periods, it starts depleting the water that we store in the reservoirs. So the way the system works is that you design it in such a way that you are able to pump and store water to deal with the peaks, to deal with heat waves that will last, a number of days or so. But if you have heat waves that last for 2 weeks or so, and at the same time you have this higher level of load shedding, it becomes difficult to pump water. Not only from the bulk side, but from the distribution side. What we as Rainwater do, we're a bulk water service provider. We treat water at our 2 purification works south of Johannesburg in Vereeniging specifically. That water, after we purify it, we have to pump it to our booster station, which is by and large south of Johannesburg. We need to further pump that water to municipalities into our bulk reservoirs, from which municipalities then draw water and distribute it to consumers. At their end, they also have to pump so that water gets into the reservoirs, because water doesn't gravitate in the entire value chain. There are areas where it gravitates, but there are areas wherein you have to pump. So if you don't have a pumping capability, both at the bulk, which is our side, and indeed at the municipal side, you are not able to have water reaching the high-lying areas in those metros. So if we have load shedding and we have high heat waves, the consumption in the low-lying areas become more than average. And in other words, people in the low-lying areas, naturally, because it's hot, they consume more water, and you don't have the ability to pump into the high-lying areas.
Now,
so naturally, what you then have typically is that hospitals and other users in those high-lying areas during that peak demand, I must say, it's only peak week demands. What do we mean by peak week demands? We mean elevated consumptions of water for a period of a week and beyond, that then starts abstracting or taking water that we have stored for peak demands over and above the water that we also put into the system. So I think what we've been experiencing, if you like, is that double whammy, that for a period of time when you have high level of water consumption and power outages, which has also affected us. We have not been spared in the entire value chain with outages. It becomes difficult for water to reach those areas.
And that's exactly where I was going. You've taken me nicely there, because is there no case to be made, or has any case been made for water to be somewhat exempted because of, the resource is critical for virtually everything. I know yesterday, today we're talking about health, but, has that case been made, or shouldn't it be made?
Yeah, that case has been made for you. I think if you look at our purification works, theoretically, on paper, they're exempted from load shedding. But unfortunately, we have also not been spared. In those areas, we do certainly have serious trips. So if you have a trip and electricity comes back, it's different from switching a plug. When power comes back, certainly you see light. But
then, for something that is legislated, isn't it someone's responsibility then to make sure that what you're saying is happening or has been happening doesn't happen? And whose responsibility is that?
Yeah, I just think if you look at the electricity side from Eskom as well, if they have load shedding, they try as much possible to ensure that we are not load shed. So it's not certainly load shedding, it's power trips, but certainly booster stations and tertiary sites and all the pump stations in municipalities, certainly they are not exempted. I think we have made a case, for example, to City Power in Johannesburg to, exempt Aikenhof, which is our booster station. And indeed, they also dependent on the amount of electricity that they get. So if they don't have that electricity that they are getting, and it becomes difficult for us or for them to give it to us. But also what we are also seeing is that there's an erratic, electricity has got quality. There's a quality of electricity that you need to get continuously because pumps are also sensitive. You cannot switch them on and off. They will certainly break. And indeed, you have to have the good power correction factor that comes into your pump stations to pump. So we are not only seeing load shedding, but we are seeing an interruption in the quality of power that comes through. So when power comes back in our pump station, you just don't switch the plug on. You have to make sure that these pumps that are running in series, that are running in certain order, you switch one after another, and then you start pumping. And when you pump, you just don't pump full load because your pumps will give in quickly. You need to stagger it over a period of time. So if you have load shedding of about 10 or power interruptions of 10 minutes or 1 hour, even when you get power back, you just don't, press a plug, pumps are running, you are full steam ahead. And the interruption of 1 hour has got really adverse impact because our consumption is 24/7. So when you have a period of time when you don't have power, the consumption continues, you rely on water in the reservoirs, and if it continues, the water in the reservoir gets depleted. You don't have head in your reservoirs because head you need to also assist with pumping into high-lying areas. If you don't have head, you can still supply water, but it doesn't reach high-lying areas. So what we're doing in the municipal space, it's also, and then we're seeing our municipalities making a lot of investment in additional pumping to pump that water into those lying areas, high-lying, yeah.
Very quickly, Mr. Musai, we have run out of time. From the discussion you've been having this week and even prior, is there a solution that is being contemplated or that has been discussed, or are you going to take it as it comes?
No, I think we are, as you may know, that in this week we have been having engagements with our municipalities, and we are certainly at technical level. We'll elevate it at the chairman's level, having these discussions with Eskom and City Power in the next few days or so, to, as you say, work out a plan and ensure that we are exempted, as if like the entire water value chain, and we get consistent water supply. The municipalities are now, let's start on our side. What we are doing is to build additional storage to store more water.
Yeah.
These reservoirs are designed to give us water for about 24 hours. So we're putting more storage. We have just launched about 210 megaliters storage, Vlakfontein reservoirs in the Tshwane area that will assist. We are bringing an additional 600 megaliters of water a day before the turn of the year. In March, we're talking additional 150. So we are intervening on the bulk side. Okay. In the distribution side, Johannesburg Water is building additional storage, which will come in effect in the next 12, 18 months. Similarly, in Tshwane and Ekurhuleni, an additional pumping stations. So okay. I think not taking it lying down, we are also doing the best that we can in our side across the entire value chain to mitigate these power outages.
Mr. Musai, let me thank you very much for your time. Hopefully those in the projects you're mentioning will come on stream sooner rather than later. Thank you so much. Well, let's hear from doctors, nurses, workers who are now on the situation on the ground. We have on the line Dr. Angelique Kutse, who is a medical doctor, as well as Mzikaise Chonji, who is a member of the National Education, Health and Allied Workers Union. Good evening to both of you. Thanks very much for your time.
Good evening to you, Gravu.
Well, let me start with you, Mr. Chonji, if I may, from what the department, which again today declined to come on, saying they have nothing new to share, but they insist that the situation is no longer threatening. It has significantly improved. Is that what is happening on the ground?
Thank you very much, and good evening to your viewers, Ravuyo. Indeed, from the information that we are having, the problem with water still persists. And the information that we're getting, every time there is load shedding, we know that we have got a problem with water supply in a number of institutions. In particular, the Rahima Musa Child and Mother and Child Hospital and Helen Joseph in Johannesburg. That problem still persists, even though the department, to their credit, they've been trying to make sure that there is a constant supply of water. But the biggest problem that we're having with this thing is that it is affecting service to members, in particular in areas like the theatre where supply of water cannot be compromised. But at the present moment, we've got that problem. Every time there's load shedding, we know that there will be a disruption of water supply.
Well, Dr. Kutse, I mean, the gift of the giver saying, well, you know, they are trying to help. In Kalafong, they are trying to help with the borehole. They need one because the one they have currently is not working. Helen Joseph, on the other hand, has 2 reservoirs, but they are not in a good condition, and so on. But the bottom line, I mean, they say, is that even though the boreholes have water, and when you fix them, the situation will indeed improve, power outages are going to create problems.
Yes, you know, one can actually only cry about what is currently happening. It is a gross failure of especially infrastructure of public healthcare facilities. You know, why on earth should the gift of the givers be able to come and bore a hole? Took them less than a week to get that going. Where are the provinces? Why is there no leadership? Why do the provinces not even outsource? Why do they rely on NGOs? It is a very sad state of affairs. You need to understand that there is a saying that says, water crisis equals a health crisis. We are in a severe crisis in health. All the infrastructure that has never been maintained are now becoming a problem, with pipes running dry. And if you want to provide quality care, healthcare facilities need to have a safe and accessible water supply. So we're not even now on accessible anymore. We're now on safe water supply. We do not know what the quality of the water is anymore. You have to understand that the water that hospitals are using are for dialysis, kidney functions, you know, if you want to put someone on the chronic kidney machines to help them sustain, for surgical instruments. We need to clean the toilets. We need to clean people, you know, people who doesn't have any control about on their bladder or stool control. How are we going to clean these people? So we're going to see an increase in infections.
So for you, it boils down to failure of leadership, lack of planning, and failure of to maintain what we have. It's as simple as that, Dr. Kutse?
Yeah. Yes. It is. It seems there's no planning. You know, we all know that there is power outages. We know what is happening. We know there should be enough diesel. We know, but somehow along the line, the budgets are not there, the will is not there. So we just leave it, and you know, and then we are very grateful for the gift of the givers. We don't ask the gift of the givers, how, Dr. Suleiman, do you manage to get it right in such a short time. How can we assist you, Dr. Solomon, to help sinking more boreholes? I don't hear that. We just sit back and let them come and rescue these provincial hospitals. It's unacceptable.
Mr. Chonji, I mean, from I don't know if you share, I mean, the view, Dr. Kutsia's view that, I mean, with leadership, with a bit of planning and with a commitment to maintaining what we already have, I mean, the situation we've seen over the past a few days could be avoided to a large extent.
To a degree, I would say I agree with the view that says that some of the problems that we're having are avoidable. One cannot understand why hospitals, for instance, some hospitals are not exempted from load shedding. Some areas are not exempted from these kind of things. One is also worried about the dilapidated infrastructure that is supposed to have been known for the longest of time.
Well, that goes back to planning. That goes to planning, maintenance, and leadership, doesn't it?
Indeed. It's very concerning, in particular because it is our communities that suffer. And indeed, from a trade union point of view, workers are expected to produce the quality service. But unfortunately, under these circumstances, it's a pipe dream to think that workers will be able to deliver the kind of services that they can produce. And the reason is because we are having a government that is supposed to be caring. And unfortunately, it's failing the people.
And very quickly, in a few seconds, Dr. Kutsia, from what you're hearing from practitioners, nurses and medical doctors on the ground, do they agree with the government's view that the situation has improved over the past few days?
No, the situation has not improved. I think it's also time that we be honest out there. So you can release a media statement saying, yes, it's improved. But have you done quality assurance? Have you maintained your infrastructure in those settings that's not or that suffered in this past few months? No, I want to see the proof. I don't want nice words going out there and to make myself look good. We need to see the proof, and the proof lies in the pudding, eating of the pudding. And at this stage, we can't eat the pudding. There's not enough water to make the pudding. There's not enough safe and clean water.
Yep. Dr. Kutsia, Mr. Mzugasa Chonji, let me thank both of you for coming on this evening and enlightening us on this situation. And that's our show for tonight. So join us again tomorrow evening, same time. Have a good night.